Hello there. We are excited to talk to you today about something that many of you may not have all the information you need. The latest and greatest feature that came in Veeam version 12, the SOS API, or the Smart Object Storage API, unlocks the ability for Veeam admins to take advantage of direct-to-object storage and do so much more. So Matt, why don't you give us the 411 on what SOS is actually doing?
Yeah, you're right, Anthony. I think this was one of those that flew under the radar to a lot of people when it came out in V12. And frankly, I think that's because on-prem primary object-based repositories are a relatively new thing, in the Veeam ecosystem. And I think what's really important to touch on is really the difference that we have here at Object First with the integration of the SOS API versus, let's just say, some other guys that do on-prem object-based storage. So the way the SOS API operates, allows Veeam to communicate directly with the object-based storage and discover a few things. Capacity is one example. So you'll see in the Veeam actual GUI, sometimes if you're using object storage, you may see an NA by free space and capacity with object-based targets. And one of the things that the SOS API unlocks is capacity visibility. The other really creative thing that Veeam did in V12 with this API is create what are called smart entities. And the whole idea of a smart entity could be a virtual machine. It might be a NAS share, but it's an object. So it's a smart entity. And the reason it gets the name smart is when Veeam actually initiates a backup job and communicates with the storage, it's basically saying, look, I'm creating this many smart entities, you decide where they go. And one of the really cool things about OOTB by Object First is we can intelligently place those smart entities across our cluster, assuming you've got more than one node. So when you're looking at sizing, as an example, the smart entity must be able to fit on one of your OOTB nodes. So if you've got a 128 terabyte OOTB node, as an example, a single smart entity can't exceed 128 terabytes. Now, for virtual machines, I feel like that's a pretty easy, thing. The only potential consideration would be a NAS share. So if you've got a really, really large NAS share and that single smart entity is over 128 terabytes, it may need to be chunked down and backed up in multiple jobs. Now, Anthony, one of the other really cool things for me, and I feel like this is one of our differentiators, we wanted to be sure we clarify here, is the way that it communicates with the ultimate nodes in the cluster. So when you look at some other solutions that run on-prem object-based storage, a lot of them run a metadata database. So basically what will happen is Veeam queries the storage then has to look in the database to find where that data actually is in the cluster. Once it gets the data back, it then goes back to Veeam and reports, look, the object you need is on cluster 3. The difference is though, when Veeam's doing like a recovery, it has to pull through this master node, if you will. So think about it like a middleman, like a traffic cop. So when you're doing things like a sequential restore, that's not that big of a deal. But Veeam has innovated so much stuff over the past 17 years, instant recovery being one. Instant recovery is all about random IO and literally running the workload directly from the backup storage. So introducing additional network hops, traffic cops, middlemen, if you will, that really, really chokes performance down. And one of the things that SOS API allows us to do with Veeam is when Veeam queries our storage, OOTB will say, look, the object you need, the smart entity, is on node 3. Here are the IP addresses specifically associated with node 3. Have at it. And Veeam will actually restore directly from that node. No middlemen, no traffic cops. So when you think about random IO, Anthony, that's really where the performance comes in.
Now, Matt, my mom always called me a smart entity, and I feel like that's probably not what Veeam meant when they created this. And I just want to make sure with you, does the end user have to do anything when it comes to configuring or setting up these smart entities?
Yeah, that's awesome. That's part of the brilliance behind this. And you are a smart entity, Anthony.
Thank
Essentially, this is completely transparent to the Veeam user and the OOPI user. You simply set up your OOPI cluster, and we've got videos on our YouTube channel that show exactly how simple that is. Literally 15 minutes, you can be off to the races. And when you add it into Veeam, this is part of the integration. And one of the ways that you'll know if it's truly integrated with the SOS API is in the Veeam GUI, you'll see S3 compatible or S3 integrated. If you see S3 integrated like we provide, that's full integration with that Smart Object Storage API. And, frankly, I feel like one of the key performance differentiators, like we said earlier, is because of this integration. Not only do we not need to run erasure coding, which complicates things, slows things down, also increases costs in most cases. We run a RAID 6 array on board, so we do have redundancy at the node level, but without needing erasure coding, we don't have that metadata replicating database to really be a choke point. And again, if all you were doing was old school sequential restores, who really cares, right? But the point is the modern data center, the modern data protection that Veeam's been innovating over the past 15 years, 17 years now, is not about sequential restores. It's about you're down, time is money. RTOs are incredibly important in today's world. Ransomware is on the rise. It's all about being able to get back online now. So having that performance at your first stop of your data backup with OOPI is absolutely paramount in today's world, Anthony.
That's super exciting. And thank you, Matt, for running us through that. I learned a bunch about smart entities, and I learned, I just might be one. So thanks for the confidence booster. And we hope you learned a lot as well. Keep track of all the things we do here. Stay learning. Peace.